Welcome to the bonus edition of the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Hall, president of WeatherGuard Lightning Tech. And today's wind turbines, as we all know, have several hundred bolts that are subjected to massive loads and stresses. Worldwide, there are more than 20 million wind turbine tower and foundation bolts. That's a lot. Keeping these bolts tightened is a monumental task. And as we know, technicians are in high demand. So in order to keep up, we need to provide technicians with the tools and resources to torque bolts faster and more reliably. That brings us to our guest, Martin Christelen of IntoMachines. IntoMachines is a relatively new company based in the Netherlands, which focuses on making technicians more efficient with tools to make torquing easier. Martin, welcome to the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast.
Thank you very much for the invite. Very happy to be here.
Well, as we know, as wind turbines have grown, there's been more bolts, and it takes longer to assemble and maintain those bolted connections. It's a big problem, right? As we have seen, we're just not able to keep up with the demand for technicians. We're kind of stuck right now on torquing bolts faster.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw this problem already 3 years ago. And our goal was to focus on optimizing the bolting procedure in wind turbines, both onshore and offshore. And we're trying to do that for both bolt tensioning and bolt torquing. And our solution is to provide very lightweight, easy to operate trolley solutions, as well as fully autonomous robots, which can help the operators in speeding up the process and getting less fatigued by handling all the heavy bolting equipment in the towers.
So that's one of the issues, Martin, that we're seeing is as these equipment gets heavier and the bolts get bigger, it becomes more of an effort by a technician to actually tighten bolts. And it sounds like we're seeing some injuries from that. Are you hearing the same thing?
Yeah, exactly. We talk a lot with technicians. So we go to wind turbines ourselves to try out the product. And the most heard feedback we get is that the back starts to hurt after a couple of hours working with a tool weighing 40 kilograms or 50 or 60 even. And that they like to have a trolley in order to help them lift the tool and transport it from one bolt to the other. And we're trying to provide those tooling to the technicians to make their lives much easier.
Because the issue right now, at least in the United States and I think worldwide, is we're going to be putting in about 100,000 wind turbines over the next couple of years. There is really no way to accomplish that goal without speeding up the process. We just won't do it. And I think in the United States, we're going to put about 3,000 wind turbines out offshore in the water, which is even a more difficult task and even bigger wind turbines. So there's a real compounding problem happening at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. We heard those numbers as well. And we are from Europe, actually, based in the Netherlands. And so small detail. We have also a lot of wind turbines, not as much as in the US. But we see the problem indeed of having to install a lot of bolts and not having sufficient manpower. And the manpower who is available, they start to fatigue as well due to the heavy work involved. So that is really the core problem we would like to solve, and that is speeding up the process. And by doing that, we also would like to lighten the work for the operator.
IntoMachines has a couple of solutions, and I've looked at your website. It's very interesting. And I want to touch on really three of the offerings at the moment. The first one is probably the most simplest device, and it seems like the most effective for the most general use device, which is called the ERAD 15K Trolley. And it looks like a manual assistance lifting tool for your existing torque wrench. So can you describe that product for a minute?
What it consists of, it's a steel frame having a gas spring inside. And the gas spring lifts a standard tool, in this case, an electric torque tool of the brand ERAD. The tool itself is around 50 kilograms, 40, 50 kilograms. And our trolley just grabs it with a standard clamp, so no adjustments to the tool itself. The setup time is around 1 minute. So you take out the frame out of the case, clamp it on the tool, and off you go. And the core principle it solves is that it makes the tool weightless. So yeah, you feel around 5% of the actual stool weight, and you have to lift it a tiny bit, but then you can just drive around the flange with the trolley.
So if that's the case, if it makes the tool weightless, what kind of improvement are you getting in time to torque, say, a tower bolts, like to do the 360 tower bolts? How much time are you saving with the trolley?
Yeah, we did several tests and also got some feedback from end customers. And the saving on the entire flange is around 30% time saving. And the funny thing is, if you start, so we did a test, one guy with a trolley and a torque tool, and one guy manually transporting the ERAD. The first 10 bolts are more or less the same. So same speed, same time saving. But if you then continue to the remaining 130 bolts, then the guy doing it manually is completely fed up, very heavy. And the guy who is running the trolley, well, he can go on the whole day because you're just so much less fatigued in the whole process. So that helps a lot with speeding up the whole bolting procedure.
And that trolley can be used on onshore and offshore wind turbines, correct?
Yeah, exactly. We modify it a tiny bit for offshore, then it gets another coating that it is more durable. And we have that trolley for both torque tools and tensioning tools. So it's brand independent, and we can adapt it to almost any bolting tool available on the market at the moment.
Wow. Okay, that's fascinating. So then you have a second offering, which is a more automated system, which is called the ABM, Autonomous Bolting Robot. There's so many robots being used in wind energy today. This is a unique product. So if you've seen this one on LinkedIn or online, the video's kind of going viral at the moment. It has two torque tools in an automated trolley. And Martin, can you explain how that tool works?
Yeah, definitely can. So in the mainly offshore environment, the costs are very high. So you would like to install and torque or tension the bolts as quickly as possible. And especially in the US, now with the feeder barge concept, and that is a concept where an installation vessel is waiting offshore, and the floating barge transports all the subcomponents to that vessel. Well, and offshore, the installation vessel grabs the separate components from the feeder barge, and especially the tower sections, they need to be bolted offshore together. And that is a lot of bolting time offshore. So, our main goal was to make that bolting procedure more efficiently, where the operators can insert the bolts in the flanges. You have to do that manually. That's very difficult to automate. But once they are in, immediately afterwards, our robot can follow and start to tension or torque the bolts.
So at that sense, then you're actually freeing up a technician. That's a huge cost saver. Yeah.
Free up a technician, and the added benefit is that we can save up to 50% of offshore installation time, because you can do almost two jobs at the same time, both inserting the bolts as well as tensioning the bolts at the same time.
The autonomous bolting robot has a little wrist keypad or touch screen so that the technician controls it sort of remotely. Can you explain how that wrist pad touchscreen works?
Yeah, we have a built-in a wireless module, and that wireless module can communicate with any smart device. So a smartphone or a smartwatch, in this case, in the video. And through that device, you can insert some bolting parameters through the robot, and then start the robot procedure itself.
Wow.
So it looks really futuristic. It works very well, but our practice and experience also learned us to insert a few manual buttons, because if you're wearing a big, heavy, greasy gloves, then you would just like to press a button. So we have that option available as well. Very sturdy, very easy to operate.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I expect that robot to be used on offshore wind farms in the United States pretty soon because in order to speed up that process, they're going to need a robot to do that. Now, I want to talk about tensioning for a minute because you do make something called the Smart Tensioner, which is another product to speed up technicians and help them finish this task. Can you explain what the Smart Tensioner is?
Yeah, so the tensioning process happens that you have a tensioning tool and you need to thread that onto a bolt or a stud. That's a piece of thread which sticks out above the nut. So you thread it on, apply hydraulic pressure. By that, you elongate the nut, and then you would like to tighten the nut with a low torque, such that the tension keeps in the stud. Then you release pressure and thread off the tensioner again. Well, that threading on and rotating the nut, that is now done with a manual wrench. And so you have to wrench it on and wrench it off again. And what we did is adding two electric motors, one to thread on the puller bar onto the thread, and the other one to rotate the nut automatically. You have a very simple device with three push buttons, one to thread on the tensioner, one to initiate the process, so it happens fully automatically, only press the button, and a third button to thread off the tensioner again from the bolt. Well, and the beauty of it is that it is 30% faster compared to a manual operation of wrenching and rotating the tension.
So as like onshore wind farms have to go and check bolt tension, this would really speed up that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially on the blade bolts, which at least in Europe, they are mostly tension bolts. They can now be retensioned much quicker. And in addition to that, you get a nice overview with the bolting parameters of the applied pressure, the nut rotation, and the bolt count, for example.
There is a number of software tools that come with your robots and your other tools. Just going through your website, there are nice data recording and imaging software bits to produce a PDF of how those bolts did. And just to keep track of how well your wind turbine bolts are doing. Is that integrated into every tool that you have, even to the 15K trolley?
You could, but at the moment, the trolley is purely a mechanical device. That means no software involved. We did that on purpose, such that clients could start with that device and then build up their arsenal of our products if they like. So the bolt registration is definitely integrated in the Smart Tensioner and into our robotic devices as well. And that, it just helps you that the operator could not be mistaken in by accident putting the wrong pressure on the hydraulic pump or the wrong torque in the torque tool. And also that you have a bolt count. So skipping a bolt by accident, that cannot happen anymore, because the tool will tell you one is left.
Okay, that's really smart design. I like that. And just to touch on blade bolts for a minute, we've had a number of blade bolt issues here in the States. It seems like that is one of the more significant bolt tensioning problems because they are tension bolts. Do you need to really pay attention to those more than, say, a foundation bolt?
Yeah, it depends a bit on the wind turbine design. It has some benefits and some disadvantages. So the bolts are a bit smaller, and that makes it easier to pre-tension them. Also, the bolting tools are a bit lighter, but you have many of them. So you have three blades, and each blade has a lot of bolts. And therefore, you would like to speed up the process of tensioning or torquing those bolts. And with our Smart Tensioner, that goes a lot quicker. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So in order to use one of your tools, How do people get a hold of you? What does that process look like? What happens when they receive the tool? What's the setup look like? Can you just walk through what that typical ordering delivery process looks like?
Yeah, very good question. We have a website, IntoMachines.com, and we have a small button which is called Request Quote. There you can fill in a very short form, tell us which tool you would like or which setup you have. And then we come back to you within 1 day with or some additional questions on the specific setup or application, or with a suggestion like this tool could fit your application best. Well, if that is all in order, we can send out the products, usually within a couple of weeks. And we have a video with it, so how to use the tools, how to operate it. Usually it's a 15-minute video. We explain what goes where, how it works, how to unpack it, and then off you go.
So there's no extra technician skill sets that are needed to use your products. It's basically pull it out of the box, watch the video, start using the tool. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, that is one of the focus points we made, that we try to limit the amount of operator training in order to operate our tools. So with the smart tensioner, we only have 3 buttons. With the robot, we have a few more, but still very simple. And with the trolley, we have a couple of adjustments you can make to change it to varying flange dimensions. But the bottom line is very simple and easy to operate.
So then, if I'm assuming that you have a number of these units out in the field and technicians are starting to use them, they must love these things because it makes life easier. We've talked about 30 to upwards of 50% in terms of time saved. How are the technicians enjoying the tool once they have it? I assume that they think this thing is great.
Yeah, so the technicians, they work faster, so they could go home earlier at the end of the day, potentially. And on the other hand, they also save their back and their wrists and all the other stuff which gets hurt during the bolting procedure. And one additional thing is the fingers, because pinching danger is still very very accurate at the moment in the wind industry. That the fingers can get pinched between tooling and the flange, and that can hurt really bad. So their safety is also improved much by one of these products we offer.
Sure, and operators and service providers must love it because they can get more done in a day. And especially in the United States, where you have wind farms that have 100 machines plus, there's a lot of machines to take care of.
Yeah, they're quite big indeed, the field. And the feedback we get is that the operation goes quicker, and also on the safety aspect. And the operators also like to give their personnel safe equipment. So that is definitely a plus.
Well, Martin, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. I'm looking forward to seeing your IntoMachines products at wind turbine sites across the world. And if you're interested in IntoMachines, check out IntoMachines at IntoMachines.com. Martin, thanks for being on the program.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And looking forward to explaining everyone the products we can offer.